Hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura. If it's your first time here, I talk about books here. And today I want to discuss some of my favorite books involving haunted houses or haunted buildings, stuff like that. So if you're interested, stick around. Some of these you might have heard of, some of them you may not have heard of, but I just want to give you my perspective of the best haunted house horror books. First up, we have one that is extremely popular by an extremely popular author, and that is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This book is about a girl whose dad wrote this memoir about a haunted house that she lived in when she was a little girl. They only lived there for I think a few months, and she doesn't believe that any of this happened. She was too young to remember what happened in this house, and she just doesn't buy it. She's kind of lived in the shadow of her father's book for her whole life and thinks that it's all just kind of malarkey. And so her father dies and leaves her the house. So she has to kind of go back and figure out exactly what she wants to do with it. And in the book, there are some parts that are like out of the father's book, like it's called House of Horrors. And so there's parts that are from the book, like you can see there, and then the rest is just a general narrative. This is definitely not a favorite of mine, but it is so well loved by so many people, so it's definitely good if you want like haunted spooky vibes. Definitely recommend for that. He also has a book called Lock Every Door. I do not have a physical copy of it because I read it when I got it from the library. But it is definitely my favorite Riley Sager book. It is about a woman who gets a job as an apartment sitter for this really, really rich building. And she notices that a lot of the other people in the building are also apartment sitting, and no one really knows exactly who they're apartment sitting for. And then a girl goes missing. And while it's like not exactly a haunted house story, it's definitely got some haunted house vibes, and to me that book was incredible. It's definitely more horror than thriller, which Riley Sager I think generally goes more towards thrillers, but I think this one is definitely classified as horror, and I definitely think that one is worth picking up. The next book on this list is a classic and one of the only books that I actually ever collect multiple copies of, and that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. So this is definitely a classic, even though I feel like some people haven't actually read it or heard of it, but it is about a woman she's an unnamed narrator. On a trip to the south of France, she meets this handsome widower, and they have like a whirlwind romance and fall in love, and he takes her back to his home in England where she's kind of like haunted more or less by the spirit of his late wife. That is the basis of this. It is so creepy and so good, and I definitely am not someone that reads a lot of classics. My head can't wrap itself around the language a lot of the times, and this is just incredible. Like, if you haven't read this and you like spooky books, this is the classic for you. Daphne du Maurier is an incredible writer. I haven't actually read any other books from her, but when I was in Paris, I did buy one at Shakespeare & Company, so I'm excited to read that. But this is just such a good book, and it flies by, and if you have read this and you have not seen the movie, the original one by Alfred Hitchcock, it is a masterpiece. Like, I definitely am always team the book was better, but that one that's an incredible adaptation, and definitely recommend reading this and then watching the original Hitchcock movie. I think it's from the 40s, something like that, but definitely need to do that. So next up is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This has been so popular. It was really popular when it first came out about 2 years ago, and it is a super, super creepy haunted house book. It is about a woman named Noemi who gets a letter from her cousin who has just married an Englishman and is living with her family, saying she needs help. Now, Noemi is a Mexican socialite. She's always going to parties and like you know, that's her lifestyle, but she has to go see what's going on with her cousin because she's like writing her to send help and she's very concerned. So she gets there and basically stays there for a few weeks while she's trying to like see what's going on with her cousin. But the family of the cousin's husband like doesn't want them to see her, and it's just very creepy, and she starts having super weird and spooky dreams about like the house coming alive and haunting her. And then there is some crazy stuff, a very crazy plot twist, and just it's definitely a slow burn kind of horror book, but it is just, I kind of want to reread this one for October this year. We'll see. I have so many other spooky books to be reading, but I would love to reread this. It's good. The next spooky haunted house-ish book that I want to recommend is Reprieve by James Hahn Matson. So this one is about an escape room that's haunted in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it is like extreme escape room. So like people are jumping out at you like constantly, people are like threatening you with knives, like it is intense. And this group is in there, and if they can make it through, okay, it doesn't say a time and I don't remember what it was, but like the whole thing without shouting the safe word, which is reprieve, then they will all win a bunch of money. And in addition to the time while they're in there, it talks about like each of the characters' lives before they got to the safe, or before they got to the haunted escape room. And there's a lot of like social commentary in here dealing with like social justice issues and everyone, you know, their own prejudices and capitalism, and how we are as a society are obsessed with like other people doing crazy scary stuff for our entertainment. So it's really good. It's definitely horror, but it does lean a little more towards social horror. I think that it is definitely a little slower than some of books of this type, but it's really fantastic. I read it about a year ago, so I don't remember a ton of details, but I do remember wishing that I had read it at Halloween because it just gives those like spooky haunted house like vibes. So definitely think that's a good one to pick up as well for October. Last but absolutely not least is one of my all-time favorite books, and that is The Shining by Stephen King. I feel like I probably don't need to explain the plot of this too much, but it's essentially about a man who takes a job as a caretaker for this hotel called the Overlook in the mountains of Colorado, and he's slowly starting to like lose his mind. He brings his family there, his son Danny, I think he's 6 in the book, and his wife Wendy, and he's a writer, so he's trying to work on his book, but really he's just taking care of this hotel in the off season. But the isolation and the snowstorms that are like boxing them in take a toll on him, and he starts to have like visions. I mean, if you haven't read it or seen the movie, I don't want to say anything else because I'm just going to tell you, read this book. It is very long. It's, my copy at least, is over 600 pages, but it is so creepy and good. You will not be able to get through it fast enough. This is one I actually am definitely planning on rereading this October because I haven't read it in 3 or 4 years, and it's definitely one of my favorites. Not just Stephen King books, but books of all time. And it's not about a haunted house really, but if you like this, you should definitely read Dr. Sleep, which is the sequel. It takes place about 30 something years later, and it follows Danny Torrance, who is the little boy in The Shining, and how he's like fared after the events of The Shining. And a lot of people didn't care for it as much, but I actually loved it. It was like on the same level of love for me as The Shining. So definitely check this one out for this October. So there you have it. There are 6 books that I think you should read if you're interested in a haunted house type horror book. I am definitely excited to read more and get more recommendations from you guys on your favorite haunted house books. So if you have one, drop it down in the comments. I would love to hear it because I am definitely feeling the spooky vibes this Halloween. I'm not always like this, but I'm really feeling the seasonal reads right now. So I would love to know your recommendations. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. If you like my content, I would love it if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Thanks.